righty, welcome back to the Sportstown podcast. I'm pleased to be joined by baseball player and we played formerly of the Twins just a little bit ago, Jay Jackson. Thanks for wanting to come on the show, Jay.
No problem. Thanks for having me on here, JJ.
Well, I was so glad you reached out. I don't have a whole lot of people that reach out, so that was great. And again, I'm excited for this interview. It's been a while, but I can't wait to get this podcast back up. But before we start the interview, if you kind of want to introduce yourself, I know you have a podcast currently. You were with the Twins recently, and then also you're mentioning you have a book coming out. If you kind of want to just let us know a little bit about that, and then we'll kind of end the show with that. But just kind of introduce
Yeah.
yourself and let you know what you're currently doing right now.
Yeah, so right now, currently I'm rehabbing from the season. But while this year, like you said, mentioned that I'm writing a book. So this year, started just getting in the process of writing a book because I didn't think I was going to play this year. But I got lucky enough to get a deal, play some baseball this season. Unfortunately, got injured a little bit, had some PRPs, got one in my knee and one in my shoulder. Um, but yeah, other than that, like just been a crazy year. But first of all, yeah, I am Jay Jackson, current MLB player, working my way back from rehab. Just have a podcast with one of my old friends named Trayvon Robinson. It's called the Brushback Podcast. Just doing a little bit of everything really to kind of keep my creative juices and keep me busy and not just lolling around feeling lazy and being worthless, I guess I would say.
All right, good to know. Good to know. Yeah, again, if you can check out his podcast, the Brushback Podcast. I'll go ahead and put a link in the description down below. But let's first start with it. Let's just start with beginning of your career. Now you've played for a lot of teams, but
Yeah.
let's go back when I think you were drafted by the Cubs in the ninth round, if I'm not mistaken, back
Yeah.
in 2008, was it?
Yeah, ninth round, 2008.
Okay.
Um, long time ago, long time ago. I feel like, yeah, going on. This was year 17 this year, so I was blessed enough to play for 17 seasons. But yeah, drafted in '08, long time ago by the Cubs. Didn't get as far as I wanted to, but
Yeah. Well, I know you said we were talking before the show started. You were talking about how you played for the Iowa Cubs. I'm actually from Iowa, currently living in Iowa as well. And you played there for a little bit. Tell me about your experience like in the minor leagues. I know it's not exactly the best experience because, it's a lot of travel. You don't get you're very underpaid. But if you want to talk a little bit about your minor league experience.
well, my minor league experience was different than all the guys that are coming up now in their minor league experiences because they're getting paid more. They have better accommodations. There's like, I guess, rules and guidelines of what should and shouldn't be done now compared to when I was coming up.
Okay.
But when I was coming up in the minors, it was a lot of grind, a lot of days, a lot of long travel, a lot of long bus rides, a lot of peanut butter and jellies, a lot of chips, just a lot of wear and tear on the body, just seeing how much you really wanted to play baseball and how much you really enjoyed baseball at the time. And not getting paid a lot compared to the guys getting paid now. I think we were getting paid what I think the most I got paid before I hit free agency was like 25 or 2,800 a month before taxes or something like that. And after I became a free agent, it started creeping up more. But like I remember one of my teammates the first time that he got a comma in one of his paychecks in AAA. He was like the happiest I've ever seen him. It was like one of the funniest things I've ever seen. He's like, dude, this is the first time I've ever got a comma in like 2 weeks of like a paycheck, like ever. And I was just like, Jesus, how long have you been playing? And this was like, he had been playing for like 4 years at this point, 4 or 5 years at this point too. And I was just like, geez, I was like, man, that's tough. And you're only getting paid for 6 months too. So
Yeah, that's rough. And I know, do you think some of that changed out like after COVID? Because there was because I know before they started the season, they had of course, the COVID or shortened season. Before that, they were not sure if they were going to have a year, but there was talk about the minor league system. Do you think it kind of changed after 2020 and they paid them a little better after they heard so many complaints?
I mean, I think that they paid him after they just got enough pressure to have to pay him. I don't think COVID really did it. I think it's been in the works and guys have been trying to get paid more than minors for a long time. I think that once like those lawsuits came out and the spotlight was put on the treatment of the minor leaguers and how much they were getting paid and how much labor that was going into it and things of that nature. And the pressure finally got to the point where it's like, okay, like you need to change something. But baseball has such a way that, they don't, like, no entities can like touch them to a certain extent. So if the minor leaguers would have never formed a union, I think it would have still been kind of revolving around the same aspect as before. But since they have a union now and they're getting things pushed across, they get better things and more things. We just never had the ability to do that. Well, we had the ability, we just never decided to do it when I was coming up.
That stinks, especially after you were in the minor leagues and then now you're not in the minor leagues anymore. Now you seeing they get treated a lot better than you did, so that would stink. So, let's start talking about when you first started with the Cubs. Now, you played for the Cubs for what, one season, and then you signed with the Marlins after that, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Or was the Marlins before the
No,
Cubs,
I got drafted by the Cubs in '08, and I was with the Cubs from '08 till 2013, I believe, in the minors. And then I signed with the Marlins in 13 and went to AA and AAA with them. And then 14 was with the Pirates.
right? Okay, yeah. And tell me about your experience with Pittsburgh, because I know back then, I know what 2013 they made the playoffs, and then they started struggling after that. But you would have played if it was 2014. You would have played with Andrew McCutchen, who had just won the MVP. How was
Yeah.
that? How was that experience like?
I mean, spring training with the Cubs, I mean, with the Pirates was fun. It was, I mean, great to see all the guys there and just be around those guys after the season they just had. And, having a team say that they wanted me to be part of it and help them get back to the playoffs and, you know, have a chance to win a World Series. So that was exciting. And then being in spring training with him and meeting him and, spending time with him, but also meeting another guy from that team, Josh Harrison, was more vital for me because he was actually one of my teammates, and got drafted with me the same year with the Cubs and got traded to the Pirates, I believe. So getting to catch up back up with him and like feel kind of familiar with the situation and introduce myself and kind of fit in was awesome. And it was a good organization. They had some crazy rules over there for guys that were in the minors and first time guys and stuff like that. But other than that, it just came down to just playing baseball. And, you realize how good Andrew McCutchen and MVP type caliber players are very early in your career at that point.
Yeah. And that's interesting, yeah, because I remember that Pirates team in 2013. They actually almost beat the Cardinals. I'm a fan of the Cardinals, and the Cardinals that year went to the World
Yeah.
Series. So that was, I remember watching that series. That was kind of nerve-wracking because the Cardinals had the best record that at the time, and almost lose to the Pirates as a wild card team. That was a bit nerve-wracking for me and Cardinals fans. Now let's jump a few years later. You actually played in Japan for a little bit. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In 2016, was that correct?
Yeah. I started my first year over this 2016. Yeah.
Okay. And that was
2016 to 2018 was first stint. Yeah.
okay. And you played what with the Carps, is that correct? Or back in
Yeah.
okay. That
Hiroshima.
must well, if you kind of want to talk about how your experience was in Japan, because that would have been interesting too, because I think it's the Nippon Professional Baseball League. That's considered the second best league in the world outside the MLB. If you kind of want to talk about that a little bit, because that's very interesting. I want to know more about that.
Oh, the Nippon. Yeah, the Nippon League. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
again, I've played in so many different leagues. I'd consider it the second best, and I mean for good reason. You see how they've played and performed in the World Baseball Classic every year, and the type of talent that comes over every year from that country, and how they perform. Playing over there was great. It's a little different. The spring trainings are a little different, a little longer. It's a little different setup. There's not as many teams, obviously, as well because the country's not as big. But the travel and everything, love the travel. Talent wise, at the end of the day, I tell people all the leagues I've played in, the one thing that stayed consistent is um it's all baseball. At the end of the day, it's still 27 outs, hopefully to win a game. Hopefully, don't go extras, but at the end of the day, it's all baseball. They have a little different techniques here and there. Like sometimes they'll play the outfield in when you think they shouldn't. Sometimes, they'll play a lot more like fundamental small baseball where they're bunting guys over, trying to do hit and runs, playing more fundamentals here and there instead of looking more for home runs. But at the end of the day, it's just trying to throw strikes, catch the ball, hit the ball, right? So it was fun. And then while I was over there, I was blessed enough and lucky enough to win 3 league championships, and had the ability to play on a really good team, and was on the actual team with current Chicago Cubs superstar Seiya Suzuki. So that was also very fun, and getting to see him grow up and how good he was and the abilities that he had, and just watching him develop.
That would have been cool winning 3 league championships. Did you by chance get like a ring or something like that for winning it all? Or
Yeah, we definitely do. Like,
okay.
I mean, it's a huge thing over there. You get rings. We got a watch one year, I think, but you get rings. And went to the Japan series 2 out of 3 years, so I got to experience that as well. I got to experience just tons of amount of support and love from the city, especially winning those championships. It was tight.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. Yeah, because I wasn't. My apologies for pronouncing it. I always thought it was called the Nippon, not the Nippon. So that's my mistake. But again, that's really cool winning 3 championships, getting something out of there. And I know baseball's huge in Japan, so that's really exciting. Now, we were talking before the interview. You played for a few other teams like the Reds. You just played for the Twins recently. You were talking about. I was asking if you had like a favorite baseball team. You currently don't, but you were talking about how or what team treated you the best. If you want to talk a little more about that and kind of give your give your analysis on each team that you played for.
I mean, it's not really an analysis because I mean, at the end of the day, like it's a business,
Mhm.
and I respect all of them because of how it is a business. But as far as just like the support and show of being kind of empathetic and things of that nature, I think just the Blue Jays and their organization and the fans, just I mean, maybe it's because of what I went through, but while I was there with my son and my fiance and everything, but also just how they were, more communicative with me to a certain degree too. Like they were upfront, I feel like a lot more, and you know, they were more personable to a certain degree. I could go to them and ask certain questions, and I felt like what they told me happened more times than it didn't compared to some of the other places I've been where I would hear one thing and then something completely different would happen, and then they would come up with an excuse or something of that nature, or they would double down on trying to be right in a wrong situation just because they can, because they have that ability and that that leverage to a certain degree. So for me, it was more so just how the Blue Jays treated me overall in those situations, and just the overall year that I had with them, and how much I felt like they supported me and kind of held me down and had my back the whole time.
Yeah, that would have been exciting. Yeah, that would have been nice. And I know I probably shouldn't ask this, but what was the least favorite team that you played for? You said you played the Blue Jays was your favorite, but who was the least favorite team you played for?
I don't know, like each team that like I mean I haven't really stuck around with one team for a long time to you know say like I love or deserve to be in one place, or that I have a least favorite, because I mean they've all haven't wanted me, right? So there's a reason they don't want me and that they don't invite me to come back to a certain degree. But I think they've all, for some odd reason or some reason here or there, have needed me for that season and then not the next. And so you can tell how you treat guys on any team, but like they're not going to be there for the long haul. You don't feel like they're going to be there for the long haul. It just you feel that energy and that you know pressure to a certain degree on both sides, front office and player. And when you're done, you just kind of like, it just feels like there's more to it, and you feel kind of left out to a certain degree, especially if you feel like you had a good year and you don't get offered back, or you feel like you did things the right way, but the team or front office or whatever else, you feel like you didn't get treated in the best way, even though you tried to do the best thing. So I mean, it's all been different things from each team, where I don't know if it's a least favorite as much of as I've grown, I've seen the inner workings of stuff, and you don't necessarily have to like it. You just have to kind of work through it and just keep your focus on what makes you happy, and keep enjoying every day, really. And that's what it's just boiled down to. Like, even when things or organizations I haven't necessarily had the best time with or been the most favorable in, I've just tried to keep my head down and work and focus on what makes me happy, which is playing baseball and just doing the best I can. So I just don't really try to pay attention to all the other extra negative stuff that happens and tries to go on.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So what do you think your best season was, starting from your career in 2009 to now? What do you think your best season was? What year? And let us
I
just go
mean,
from there.
I think they're all great in different ways. I think the years I had in Japan, obviously, people would count to say that those were probably my best years. But then I look at the years in the seasons I had in Mexico, or the season I had in El Paso, or the season I had last year with the Blue Jays. You know, I've looked at different stretches of time when I've been really dominant. It's just, I mean, you have different points of your career where it's not just a season. You hopefully have a season, but I feel like the second stretch of my career from, I guess, probably 2014 onward, probably 2013, 2014 onward, I feel like I played some of my best baseball after that. You know, it's just, and it was more of a consistent thing for me. I felt like it wasn't just one season. I felt like I played really good, really clean, consistent baseball for a number of years after that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I kind of wanted to know about that a little more, and I feel like more people would be interested with that. So, now we kind of we'll shift a little bit toward like the MLB season so far. I know you're a big baseball fan. You talk about in your podcast. Um, there's been kind of talks right now on who the best player in baseball is right now. Is it Otani? Is it Judge? Is it someone else? Who do you think currently right now is the best player in baseball?
I mean, in the best player in baseball, I mean, we have to wait to see how Shohei comes back from his injury and pitching wise. But if he comes back to anything near what he was, then you have to give him the nod just because he's pitching too.
Yeah.
But as far as best hitter, numbers wise, you have to say it's Otani and Judge right now, right? I mean, the way Judge is swinging the bat with the average in the homers, and the way Otani's just been a DH only and on pace to be the MVP again in the NL this year. It's just a DH, which on my podcast we just talked about it. This would be the first time that you've had a DH in the NL win an MVP ever, because there's never been a DH in the NL. So for him to make history like that too as well is unbelievable. You have to give him, you know, he's in the top three, obviously. And, you know, you put Judge in there because he plays unbelievable defense when he's out there in the field as well. Great arm, the way he's hitting for, he's a true five-tool player, and he's at the highest caliber in all five of those tools. So you
Yeah.
got to say like that. And then you can't forget about Mike Trout, but Mike's hurt again. Like, you know what I mean? So, and then Acuna's hurt. And then you have Ellie De La Cruz. Like, you know, you have all these guys that have the ability. And then you look at the year that Marcell Ozuna's having this year too. Could he possibly be one of the best players in baseball right now too? Because technically he's in the top three cat in every batting category in the NL2 right behind Otani. So you have guys that could be there, but I think if you're looking at overall, as far as marketability, face of baseball, who's producing it with the pressures on them and all these things, it's got to be Otani and Judge. And I think they're neck and neck, just because you look at the markets they're in too. Like one's in New York, one's in LA. You're in the two biggest markets and you're performing with the contracts, and you're both on pace to win the MVP. And hopefully that'll be the matchup people want to see in October, November for the World Series, right? Dodgers
Yeah.
versus the Yankees.
Yeah.
That'd be a very interesting series for sure.
Yeah, I feel like baseball would rather have the Dodgers and the Yankees, the two biggest markets in baseball. And no disrespect last year. I mean, you had the Rangers and Diamondbacks, but those aren't the, biggest markets compared to the Dodgers and Yankees. And I feel like the last few years we've thought it was going to be the Dodgers and Yankees, and something happens where they get beat or they struggle, something like that. And then you also mentioned a good point too with the DH. I know you were, like I said, you were a pitcher, but do you think DHs should, or do you think the NL should still have a DH? Do you like that rule, or do you think pitchers should?
I was a hitter too, though. Like
Okay.
I pitched in college. I was a two-way player. I was actually going to stay for my senior season so I could hit again. My junior year, I ended up hitting like right at like or right under 330 in college. So I wasn't. I have. I loved hitting. Like as a pitcher that loved to hit. Like more guys as we've grown through this game. you see less two-way players. When I was coming up, like most of my friends and most of the guys I played with played a position in pitch. Like it just became more specific of being pitchers and certain hitters and this, that, and the third as the game's grown as well. So for me, I loved seeing the pitchers hit in the NL, even though, it kind of was a free out if you knew a guy wasn't a great hitter. But, for me, it made it more of pitchers being athletes too, because it's like, okay, if I'm in NL, that means I have to know situations. I have to be able to maneuver in the game as well and think within the game. Because if I get this bunt over, if I get this guy in, even if I'm not a great hitter, but I get this guy in from second or I get him over to third and we score a run, that makes my job a little easier. So knowing that too and actually putting that in your game while you're pitching, to me was more fun because I love being in the action all the time. I love being a position player more than I love being a pitcher for the most part growing up until it was decided for me that I was going to be a pitcher.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of like being a two-way player, Otani most likely is going to pitch next year. Hopefully, he comes back. Do you think eventually the Dodgers are going to want him just to play, just to do one thing where just pitch or just hit? Because I think he's a better hitter than a pitcher. But do you think eventually the Dodgers are going to only want him to do one thing, or do you think they're just going to keep doing what he's doing right now?
I mean, we really can't say that he's a better hitter than pitcher.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, he's a 40-40 or 30-30 guy, but when he was a pitcher, he was on pace to almost every year be a 20-win pitcher with a terrible team in the Angels at the time, too. You know what I mean? And he was sitting there at the top of the league with strikeouts. His ERA was in the top, 10 every year. So you can't, arguably, he's pretty even on pitching and hitting. Like, it's
Yeah.
just this year, it's a noticeable jump from pitching to hitting because you don't get to see him pitch this year. So in your mind, he's obviously a better hitter because all you've seen, I feel like this year is him hitting. Like when he was a pitcher and a hitter, we always talked about his pitching as well. Like again, the last most memorable thing that we remember from him pitching is him facing Mike Trout in the World Baseball Classic. So that's what I'm saying. He's facing one of the greatest hitters in our game, strikes him out, and his teammate and strikes him out on the biggest stage. You can't say that he's arguably a better hitter than pitcher. You know what I'm saying? So for me, um, I don't know. It just depends on what he comes back as. I feel whatever their organization, the Dodgers are so good at forming teams and complementing their teams and putting their teams together and have a cohesive unit that if they need him to pitch, then he'll pitch. But if they need him just to hit, I feel like they'll be like, okay, well, you're just going to hit. Like you might come out of the bullpen or be a long reliever or something like that. We'll have days where you'll be available for us. And if you don't in the second half of the game, whatever, we'll do it. I think there's nuances that they can incorporate into it to figure out how they're going to use him later on because of the money that they have invested in him. Granted, that money is already probably like made back from all the marketing and stuff they sold with Otani and everything else, but it's going to be up to them. I feel like it's going to be a coin flip. I feel like they're going to let him do both as long as he's able to and that his body holds up and as long as he doesn't have any more injuries. But only time will tell.
Yeah. And also, too, you mentioned with the World Baseball Classic, Otani strikes out Trout. But I think in that game, if I'm not mistaken, he was actually pitching or he was hitting, and then was one of the bullpen guys. I don't
Yeah,
think I think that's that rule. You haven't really seen much of that, but I think that's not allowed in baseball. Do you think they would make a rule to where you were hitting and then you could become a bullpen guy later? Do you
you
think that?
can. It's actually a rule. You can do that because I used to do that as a DH in college. I did it. I would DH and then I would pitch in the eighth or ninth. You can
Okay.
still do it now. It's just the rule is you lose the DH at that point. You become a pitcher, so it becomes a 9-man order. It's that's the simplest way to do it.
Okay.
Is be a hitter and then just kill the DH and be a pitcher and make the DH the pitcher. That's just all you do. It would go back to almost like National League rules once you take the DH out.
Mhm. Do you think the
So
Dodgers would? So if this happened, or so well, fast forward to 2025. Do you think if he's ready, you think the Dodgers would start him off slow, kind of like that, or do you think they would make him a pit like a two-way player again?
I think they would have days where they would schedule it where he's gonna, if they're gonna do that, make him a bullpen guy and throw like and build up and have shorter stints, they'll have days that he's available, that he'll know he's available, and schedule around it where he's going to get in the game early, or he's going to start the game and then become the DH, or he's going to be the DH and he's going to finish the game like piggyback. I think they'll figure it out. They'll make it a way that he does that, but it'll be interesting to see. But I think for sure they'll build him back up and not have him out there for sure throwing, 4 or 5 innings out the gate coming back from Tommy John surgery. They're going to have him on an innings limit anyway. So it'll be how they stagger it and just how he feels too.
It's interesting too because I wondered about that, and it's definitely I've heard about coming back from Tommy John surgery. It's a hard thing to do. So
Yeah.
it'd be fun definitely to watch Otani next year. It's also better for the game as well. Also, you were mentioning Mike Trout. Is there any way you think he actually leaves the Angels, or do you just think he's there for his entire career?
I think he has to get traded.
Mhm.
And I think it has to be a situation that a team has to be appealing enough for him to leave LA because he's the cornerstone of that team right now. But honestly, he needs to get out of there if he's going to win. And I think the only knock against Mike Trout, besides the playoff appearances, is him being healthy. And I think him going to a new team in a new situation, honestly, will allow him to get a new energy and a new, like, reinvigorated spirit where he stays healthy. And we see a better version of Mike Trout. Whereas in LA, he just keeps getting hurt. Like, there's just something that's got bad juju of Mike Trout written all over it down there that they might just need to switch it up, honestly. I don't know how he gets out of there, but it's got to be an appealing thing, and it's got to be a team that can honestly take the cap space and that he's going to be willing to go to because he's got enough time and enough leverage where he's not going to go somewhere he doesn't want to go.
It's
I mean,
crazy.
I could see, honestly, could see him going. He's a Philly guy, and I don't see him going to Philly, but I could see him possibly going to Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Him going to Pittsburgh and then, them building that they got a young core, building that team around him and um and O'Neill, the shortstop and that pitching staff they have out there right now. You put him back at home close to Philly in the NL Central again. He possibly in the playoffs every year for the next couple of years because you see how the NL Central is.
Yeah, because that was actually my next question on what team you think would fit Mike Trout the best. I hadn't actually heard of the Pirates. I did hear of the Phillies, and I
It's
believe
too
he's
much money.
yeah,
Cap space. Their cap space, like if they were gonna go all in, completely all in, and break the bank and break the budget and owe as much as they could in this luxury tax and all that stuff, then yeah, 100%. I would be like, hey, that's the one place Mike Trout wants to go. He wants to go home, so let him go home for sure. And think about the team they would have: Castellanos, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, Turner, Realmuto, Wheeler, Suarez, Sanchez. Like, it just goes on and on. Like,
they'd be the Yankees of the NL base.
100%. That's better than the Yankees. That's an old school Yankees team with new salary cap.
Yeah.
That's like an old school '90s, 2000s Yankees team that like you can't explain like how they have so many guys that are all stars on the team.
That would be crazy to see that team. I don't think it would work. I don't think it would happen, as you mentioned, because you'd have to break the bank. But
Yeah.
it's also crazy too with Mike Trout that he's the best player. He was the best player for such a long time, but he's only been in the playoffs once. He was either in 14 or 15, and they got swept. So it's crazy to think that Trout will probably go down as a top 10 player. Do you think of all time or top five? And yet he
Mm,
hasn't even won a playoff game.
that's why I don't think he'll go top 10
Okay.
because the playoff records do hurt in that matter of being top 10.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because for me, even though some people don't put him in there, even though Barry Bonds doesn't have a World Series, he's got a lot of playoff experience, right? And he helped those teams and the Giants and the Pirates get to the playoffs a lot of times. And they won some games in those playoffs.
Mhm.
And he doesn't get any of that credit. But you look at realistically the top guys that people claim as like the top players at each position, they all have a championship to a certain degree or have playoff success to a certain degree, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you put them in the top 10 of all time, but you for sure put them in the top 10 center fielders.
Yeah.
Probably put them in the top 5, possibly center fielders, because I don't know if there's possibly, 5 center fielders that are going to be in the top 10 all time, realistically. I mean, there might be, because you got Griffey and Willie.
Yeah. Eventually, you're gonna have Aaron Judge too. So
You're going to have Judge in there too, but I don't know if Judge is going to be a center fielder or a right fielder. You got to put him
yeah,
in.
yeah. So I mean, if you think about realistically in the past, with because I know there's been some players that were really good and did enjoy success. Like if you go way back in like in the 1900s when you had Ted Williams, he played with a lot of bad Red Sox teams. I think he made the playoffs 4 times. So, but we still consider him one of the greatest. But it is a shame to see because like you want to see Trout, but yet he's been injured lately, and then on top of that, he plays for a really bad Angels team. They made so many bad moves in the past, and it's a
So
shame to
many.
see. Yeah, especially overpaying for
But
players and just injuries and
they've had some bad luck too and overpaying players, like you said. I think them hiring Ron Washington this year was definitely a good move. I think he's bringing some culture back to that team, and they're playing some good baseball. And they've snuck up and beat a lot of teams that we didn't think they were going to. I mean, they're still not great this year, but I feel like they've. I think the overall product people have seen has been a little bit better than it was last year,
yeah.
honestly.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think we've kind of
And that's without Trout too.
mhm, yeah.
So
Do you like we'll talk about the Angels a little more here. Do you think the Angels have any really good young players that you really like that you think can be with Mike Trout can be the franchise or can be the players of that franchise?
I would have to dive into their organization more. I don't really dive into organizations anymore unless I'm actually going to sign for them and play. But
Mhm.
just to know kind of like how the team looks, if that's going to be a place that I'm willing to go to, help win a World Series or be part of a rebuild or whatever else the case may be that they're asking me to do. But I would have to dive into their organization a little bit more since I wasn't on the West Coast a lot this year, with me being in the international league, being up in Minnesota and St. Paul and whatnot, and how everything's just kind of played out this year. So, um, I don't know. I would have to see their farm system. I would have to see who is really like their front office and who's their GM, and like, is he new? Is he I think I met their GM, and I think he has a plan, but I think for a new GM to come in, like to establish a plan and a culture too, with a new coach and a new manager, is going to take a couple years. So it'll be interesting to see their drafts the next couple years because Trout's going to be there for a while, and for him to go through another rebuild again, that's tough. It's tough. He's been through like 3. It's tough.
Yeah. Well, because I think speaking of the Angels GM, I think he just got excuse me, a little too much water there. I think they just extended their GM if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong. For some reason he's escaping my name, or escaping my mind, but I'm pretty sure they just extended their GM. So, uh, but anyways, we'll dive off the Angels here for a sec, or probably the rest of the show. But um, so far this year, there's been a lot of stories, and I think we have to mention the White Sox on how bad they are this year. Could you even imagine being a player for the White Sox this year? I mean, how discouraging that would be because you have a chance to have more than 120 losses, which would be so tough.
I mean, haven't they've been bad for the past couple years though. So I don't know. Again, I mean, that's the front office and ownership, and I mean, it's building a culture there too. And right now, that culture it looks like is not in the best situation. I don't know if that's a manager, like they need to hire a new manager, but I feel like all the managers you've seen come there have came there, and then it's still been the same thing. So I don't know if that's more of a front office and ownership thing at this point, or if it's the players they're getting to come in, or I don't know. I mean, I feel like being a big leaguer, you're going to enjoy being there, but I don't know the outside elements of what they're going through to understand like why it's not translating to more success because they have a lot of big league talent on that team. It's just, why is it not translating to being better? Especially they haven't been really a force in the AL Central, I would say, since they won the World Series back in the day, right? That was the last time you like seen them be highly touted. You've seen them be highly touted with the prospects that are coming over, like Eloy and who was the other guy? Who was the left fielder? I can't think of him, but the two prospects with them, and then you see Garrett right now throwing well. You see they just traded away Kopech. They just DFA'd my friend Brebbia. So I mean, I don't know what they're doing. They're trying to rebuild, and it's tough to rebuild in a competitive AL Central when you have a bunch of scrappy teams too. And I don't know if they're finding the right pieces to fit their culture and fit their team the way it should.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can't really speak for those guys. I know that it just sucks to lose.
Well, if you go rewind back to 2021, they won 93 games, and then they bring in LaRussa. And even though I'm a Cardinals fan, I don't think LaRussa should have been a manager at that age. And they
No,
just went, I think they went 81 and 81 that year, that next year, and then they just completely, fell off the map after that. Because I think they had only, 63 wins last year, if I'm not mistaken. But like, just amazing how they went from 3 years ago to possibly being a World Series team, winning the NL Central. I think they won the NL Central in 21, or AL Central, excuse me, in 21, to a team that's chasing history on the wrong side. So,
chasing away on the wrong side now, right?
so now that we're kind of toward the end of the interview here, and again, thanks for coming on. I'm really
Of
glad
course.
you wanted to come on the pod. But right now, I think we kind of expect the Dodgers and Yankees, or maybe even the Phillies and Yankees, to be in the World Series. The Orioles have looked really good, even the Guardians as well. It's crazy to think the Royals this year, they completely shocked everybody. But do you have another team that we're not mentioning that you think could be a sneaky World Series team?
I mean, I got to say my boys up in Minnesota for sure. Because I mean, the way they've been playing, if they can get healthy, Royce can stay healthy. They have a chance to do some damage. I mean, I feel like the starters up there are going to be the key because they're all young and they've thrown a lot of innings already, and they're going to have to kind of hold that thing together, especially with Joe Ryan being down now and Bailey and Pablo being the front two of that right now. But I think the Twins, I don't think the Royals really shocked a lot of people because they've been putting together a solid team around Bobby Witt and Salvi Perez for a while. And just you were just wondering when it was all going to catch up because Salvi's already a World Series champion. They have a great culture there. They know what they're doing. It's just all trying to click together. They got Renfro over there right this year. And, Hunter's up and down, but when he's hot, he can help you boost the team dramatically. Um, and let's see, another sneaky team. Let's see. Um, the Giants are kind of creeping in on the NL West out of the wild card for somehow. I don't know why. I don't know how they're doing that right now with the team, but they got lot of young guys. I feel like they might have some momentum over there as well. You look Baltimore, considering they're not winning the division and the staff they have, the team they have, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with for a long time. But I don't know if they're really a sneaky team either. But Baltimore definitely is high up there for me as a team that could possibly win a World Series. And I mean, the rest of them, you're looking at. There's not really any other sneakers. I would say the Padres, but I mean, the Diamondbacks are. They just went to the World Series last year, so you can't call them sneaky either, right? I mean, you do it 2 years in a row, it's not really sneaky anymore.
Yeah.
But the Mets. The Mets are right there outside the wild card right now. They got a chance to make the playoffs. You look with that team, if they can make the playoffs, they got Lindor, they have McNeil, they have, some guys on that team that can play some ball. That when the lights turn the brightest, you got Alonso at first. That they get some momentum in New York. You never know what might happen. So that could be a sneaky team that just creeps up out of nowhere in the NL East too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of teams you can mention as well, and it's interesting. You know, the Mets. I think a lot of people didn't expect the Mets to be this good because after last year, it seemed like it was a fire sale, and now they have a chance to make the playoffs. But it's
David
interesting
Stearns.
how. What was that?
David Stearns. He's a good man at making teams. He's good. It's about how you piece teams together in a culture that you build. You better build a culture of belief and hope that you put these guys together in the right positions to win, put them in the right situations, and you see what they have. You never know. I mean, baseball's one of those sports where anything can happen. And it's a lot of games. I mean, we play a lot of games. It's not a sprint. Ours is a complete marathon.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the Orioles too. Like they play in a stacked division. It's crazy. They'll probably have what over 100 wins and maybe not win the division because the Yankees are so good too. It's crazy.
Right?
But but anyways, again, thanks for coming on the show. Kind of want to talk more about your book. You mentioned that, and if you want to talk about your podcast as well. But let me know more about your book and kind of give the audience more
Oh yeah.
information and also where we can find it.
The book hasn't been released yet. We're finishing the editing process now. It should be done in the next couple months. We're gonna have the pre-release launch party around my birthday. My birthday is right before Halloween. So, but I think we're shooting for the official release date to be 11/11. So it's definitely a good luck thing, and it's a good luck book. And I want it to be a motivational book to help people, so have them better themselves and be happy and be good luck. So 11/11 kind of works out perfectly, right? But the title of the book that I think we're going with is it's going to be called Nine Innings to Your Best Life, Smiles and Success. So it's a motivational book, kind of has a couple of my stories about how, I kind of got through different things and trying to just help people be the happiest, most hopeful, and best versions of themselves, and just enjoy the book. And, hopefully it touches at least one person. That was the goal of writing, just to help one person get a little bit happier in whatever they're doing, enjoy their life a little bit more, and just live to the best of your abilities. Like that's all it really matters to do, and just give you different tips and tricks that I've used and that we've come up with and I've come up with to get you to live just a little bit happier and enjoy just your days just a little bit more.
All right, sounds good. Can't wait. Again, November 11th is when they're shooting for. Also, too, if you want to talk a little bit more about your podcast, again, the link will be down in the description and everything like that. But if you kind of want to mention, I know you just released an episode this
Yeah,
morning, I think, correct? Or
I believe it was this morning, yesterday, with one of my guys that I used to play with, Corey
okay.
Wimberly. Podcast is just, it's called the Brushback Podcast. It's me and my good friend Trayvon Robinson. He's been playing baseball professionally for 19 years, while I've been playing for 17. He's in the transition phase of coaching and playing at the same time, while I was in the transition phase of playing to motivational speaking and entrepreneurship, and just helping in ways that, um, are next for me, coaching, whatever it might be. But the podcast is just us getting guys that we played with or that have come up through systems that we know that are, African American baseball players, since there's not a huge group of us. So getting us on there and guys talking about their experiences and hopefully helping the world see, through our eyes kind of baseball, and hopefully bring more people to love baseball and more African American kids to play baseball, or just kids in general to play baseball, but to help people see the inner workings, but enjoy the love and see, just our life that we had, and just chop it up and have a good time. It's just really there just to have a good time, and people come enjoy baseball with us, realistically. Baseball and life.
All right. Again, thanks for coming on, Jay. Again, you can check out his podcast. Again, the link to it in the description below. You can also find him on Instagram. Are you on Facebook or on Twitter or anything like that? Or
I'm on X, same
okay.
same tag at Jackson58, same as Instagram, definitely on there. We'll definitely have also the clothing brand is gonna be doing more stuff and launching more stuff soon. It's called Team Jacksland. So that'll be in the works. New hats coming in soon with the smile logo. So we're there's just a lot going on, and people can find me everywhere: Twitter, IG, life. I'll be posting randomly if anybody ever wants to reach out to me, the team, to speak or help in any way possible in their communities. Like, I'm here to help as much as I can and just help people just have fun, enjoy baseball, enjoy life.
Okay. Sounds good. Again, thanks for coming on, Jay. Again, you can find his podcast. You can also find him on Instagram and X and stuff like that. So again, thanks for coming on, and enjoy the rest of the season, and good luck with your podcast.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on here for sure. Thanks, man.